2004, thousands of people took to the streets of Kiev to celebrate what was known then as the Orange Revolution, culminating in the election of Viktor Yushchenko as president of the Ukraine. But now, 5 years later, that exuberance is gone. The Economist of February 19, 2009, illustrates that what we're seeing right now in the Ukraine is a significant economic slump. At the same time, partisanship is rampant. What we as Americans have to keep in mind, though, is given Ukraine's vital role in petroleum and natural gas, and also their proximity to Russia, the stability of that country can definitely have broad ramifications. And for that reason, we must ask today's question. What should the government of Ukraine do to restore prosperity? And the answer is the government must put forth a renewal of the fundamentals of government, really focusing on three key postulates. First, the government has to clean their own house. Second, they have to restore fiscal efficacy. And finally, the government has to augment their geopolitical paradigm. But first of all, an essential for the government of the Ukraine is going to be, in essence, cleaning their own house. If we do not see a non-corrupt and efficient government putting forth any kind of policy, there's no real way that the Ukraine as a country can really move forward in any significant way. It's going to come down to laying the foundation for future governmental action. There's a couple key steps they have to take. First of all, the infighting between President Viktor Yushchenko and Prime Minister Yulia Tymoshenko has to be put to a stop. The New York Times of March 4th, 2009, illustrates the point that what we've seen recently are raids on several petroleum businesses, which many people believe are politically based. People think that President Yushchenko ordered these to gain ground and political leverage on people who might have been involved with them from opposition parties. But this is only one part of a much larger problem. What we've seen is a level of bickering between the executive and legislative branch that has made any kind of political progress essentially impossible. It's total gridlock. This is very bad for the people of Ukraine, and therefore, for their economic prosperity, there must be some level of consensus reached between the two branches to allow for any kind of action to be taken. And this is not politically impossible. It's not politically impossible because we must remember the fact that political parties in the Ukraine are incredibly fluid. Meaning that right now, just because Ms. Tymoshenko and Mr. Yushchenko are the primary political actors, does not mean that a third party, led by someone like Viktor Yanukovych, who is also a major player in parliament, could also become a rival in the upcoming presidential elections. What all this really means, though, is when we have a level where we no longer have gridlock, or at least the same level of gridlock, that's going to make it easier for the government to crack down on corruption, to draw clearer lines between governmental policies and the oligarchs, which have often led to a level of blurring of those lines incredibly detrimental to long-term governmental prosperity. When we have a more effective government in the Ukraine, it's going to be easier to put forth long-term strategies for securing the future of that country. But second, we have to get down into some of the nuts and bolts of policy. And an absolute essential is that the country of Ukraine restore a level of fiscal efficacy necessary to combat the current economic woes, and also to make sure the country's economic future is bright. Several steps have to be taken to lay some more fundamentals. One thing the government of the Ukraine must do is secure a stronger central bank. A long problem, as the problem has been there in the Ukraine for a long time, has been things like inflation, problems with capital flows, and other things like derivatives are almost totally unregulated. That's because the central bank of the Ukraine has been, in many ways, it has had very little autonomy from the government. And this has led to political economic policies that are incredibly detrimental in the long run. What we must see is a central bank which is largely autonomous. That's going to make it far easier for the bank to set a prime interest rate, and also to maintain a level of economic regulation, which is going to help to increase prosperity. But something else that has to be implemented is the government of the Ukraine has to throw open the books. Bloomberg News of March 3rd, 2009, points out the recent fact that the Ukrainian currency has skyrocketed as the deal between the IMF and their government has gotten closer. This is because one of the things the Ukrainian government did is they had to open up their internal revenues in order to get the $16.4 billion loan. This is a positive first step, but more has to happen. The people of the Ukraine should have full access to their government's own bookings. They should know how their tax dollars are spent, because this is also going to help to reassure investors, both foreign investors and also domestic investors. What we're going to see through these means of making sure the government is implementing a level of fiscal policy more beneficial and in a way that is not nearly as closed off and opaque. It's going to be easier to lay the foundation for a level of economic success that the people of Ukraine truly deserve, in the sense of creating business growth and job growth at home. But finally, we have to turn our attention abroad. And what we need to see from the government of the Ukraine is an augmentation of how they approach foreign policy. Because they're located right next to Russia, and because they want to become part of NATO, they're always stuck between a rock and a hard place. And for that reason, it's very clear that the government of the Ukraine has done, on balance, a good job. But they need to go even further. One country the people of the Ukraine should start to reach out to more closely is the country of China. A Financial Times article from March 1st, 2009, cites a recently Secretary of State Hillary Clinton who stated that NATO should continue to consider Ukraine as a future member. But while that's happening, Ukraine has to strengthen their geopolitical hand. Right now, China wants things like natural gas and oil, something the Ukraine has. They also have $2.3 trillion in foreign cash reserves, money that could be sent to the Ukraine to buy essential goods and services. What this could do is this could help the Ukraine not only get more money from foreign investors, but it could also strengthen their hand geopolitically, because Russia is in no position to challenge China for fear of what China might do to Russia's own strategic petroleum interests in Central Asia. So what this is going to do is essentially Ukrainian triangular diplomacy, of helping the Ukraine, while they're waiting for better ties with the West, be able to apply greater pressure to Russia by having a stronger ally, which in turn Russia fears. This is going to make sure the people of the Ukraine are more secure, because ultimately it's going to be hard to secure a bright future if they're always living in the shadow of an aggressor state. Looking back at all of this, the government of the Ukraine must lay fundamentals, such as cleaning their own house, creating greater fiscal efficacy, and also expanding their geopolitical reach to countries like China to outflank Russia. The exuberance of 2004 might have faded for now, but in the long run, the future for the people of Ukraine can definitely be bright.